South, the series, is an audiobook production. It contains subject material not suited for a younger audience. Listener discretion is advised. South, the Pinewood High School incident, is the telling of an unfortunate soul, a young girl lost to the whims of society. We follow the story of Cassidy Learman, a Pinewood High School student, as she finds herself stumbling down a dark and dangerous path. In Alora Shores, corporations control your every thought. It is a place where governments decide where you live and who you talk to, where the best parts of humanity are stripped away, turning the innocent into the monsters we fear the most. The path of darkness is broad and inviting. A banquet of thieves ready to take all you have. Hold true to your beliefs. If you are not careful, someone will replace them with their own. In the previous chapter, Cassidy awakens from her assault the night previous in an abandoned building, being taken care of by a man named Andrew Dokeith, aka Chip. Chip explains that he and Jerry have a history together, that she went by the name Jessamine when he worked with her, and that she helped him cover up a tragic trafficking case in North Slayton. After hearing his tale, Cassidy manages to get in contact with Jerry again and is promptly told to return to civilization. Their goals still remained and needed to be achieved if either of them are going to see peace. While on the way back, Cassidy affirms her desire to strike back at the witches, but Chip warns her about the consequences of going down that road. They reach the shopping center where she and Amber had their fateful encounter with Chaos, and, with some hesitation from Chip, the two went their separate ways. Cassidy manages to score a free meal while waiting for Jerry to contact her again, giving her enough time to see just how many missed calls she had incurred since her supposed death and resurrection. When she is finally contacted by Jerry, she is reminded again of how she ended up being the target of the witches, before she is hit with the sudden news that Jerry has found Amber dead, located on the docks in North Point, Slayton. We now know of Amber's untimely end, and with Cassidy's goal of reuniting with her dashed, what will she do now that her best friend is gone? The story of Cassidy Learman continues, with the weight of loss pressing itself onto our hapless protagonist. Chapter 17. It normally took someone approaching Slayton from East Pinewood about 14 minutes via interstate to reach downtown. Unfortunately for Cassidy, however, the ride was halted by late afternoon traffic due to an overturned car. She didn't check her phone or feel antsy. The sound of her driver's poor lungs trying to expel tar from their abused esophagus had made her decide earlier into the drive to escape into her mind. She had plenty to think about after all. She was about to discover Amber's body, something she never could have imagined doing, and it was all thanks to the mysterious woman she called Jerry, a cybercriminal that Chip called Jessamine. After the woman was successful in clearing the obstruction in her throat, Cassidy pondered what more she didn't know about. "Sorry, kid." The older woman was late into her 50s, but looked more like she was nearing her 70s. Cassidy ignored her and continued to look out the window at the towering buildings she was approaching. The city of Slayton had always scared her as a child. Not only was it the flood of people wandering the maze-like streets or entanglements of road-blocking construction that spiked her anxiety, it was the noise the drawbridge made every time she would cross over it. The loud vibration from driving over the metal grates would make her think about what it would be like if the bridge had failed, how far she would fall before being cast into the depths of the ocean waters. It wasn't until thinking about this that she remembered her drive with Jessica again, and how she had forgotten all about the bridge when with her. A sad thought to compound the misery she wished would flee from her heart. Seeking to put herself out of depression with a glance at her phone, Cassidy took a deep breath and considered looking at one of their pictures together. She thought it too soon and chose not to, her emotions beginning to swirl around the memories she felt she was doing good with holding at bay. When the car she was in had finally crossed the high-rise and entered the city via the main street, she refocused on why she was there. It didn't matter what some internet hacker said about something she didn't witness in person. If she was going to accept Amber's death, she needed proof of it. Her phone rang. "You hung up rather quick, Cassidy." Jerry's voice had begun to irritate her whenever she heard it. "I didn't finish explaining." "What's there to explain?" Cassidy didn't care about pleasing anyone anymore. "I didn't want you to feel as though you were alone is all." Jerry almost sounded sincere as the car came to a stop near some old train tracks on a service road. "You're at the first stop. I need you to go to the back of the building to pick up a briefcase." "Not very original, Jerry." Cassidy exited the car and surveyed the one-story abandoned warehouse. The task was simple enough, but she still did her best to keep her head on a swivel. That area of Slayton didn't look the least bit safe, but she did as she was told nonetheless. The short walk down the small alleyway was enough of a distance to make her feel as though she needed to check her surroundings frequently, the edge of the standard black briefcase showing itself just behind a metal trash can. When the briefcase was secured, she got back in the car and was soon driven towards the next stop. It wasn't until they reached the next block that Cassidy felt the need to acknowledge the storm of thoughts churning in her mind. "I didn't expect to feel so numb." Jerry knew her better now. "You've known death for some time now, Cass. It follows you around like a lost puppy. How did you think her life was going to end up?" "Just going across her hunter feed told me enough about what her future was going to look like." Cassidy was angry at Jerry's statement, but she wasn't going to tell her that she was wrong. Amber always played too much with her safety, and, statistically, it shouldn't have been a surprise. Cassidy let the woman driving her around take a quick break to breathe in the last drag of a cigarette before continuing further north into Slayton. They passed a few landmarks she recognized from her earlier years, such as a state-of-the-art hospital and old residential area, before they neared the end of the long stretch near Penelope's house. Cassidy glared in the direction of the house, and a part of her wished that she could hex the girl with her eyes alone. As she amused herself with ideas of revenge, Jerry reached out to her again. "You must really want to get back at them, huh?" Cassidy narrowed her eyebrows as if to add Jerry's comment to the list of reasons to enact her desire. But she didn't know what that would even look like. It was as Chip mentioned. She was just one girl against a group of psycho witches and an enthralled ex. All she had was her anger, thanks to Elizabeth, and no one in her life was able to do anything to help as well. She would throw herself at the proverbial wall of opponents, but she knew she would get nothing from that but more bruises. "What would you do?" Jerry's grin creeped through the call slightly. "Thinking about taking a weapon to them? Maybe a gun or something. Too messy. Too predictable." "Chip told me to stay away from you." Cassidy wanted to make her feel something other than in control. "Yeah, cops are like that. Even the crooked ones." It didn't work. "Maybe you should go to them instead. They tried to lock you in the psych ward when you killed that horse. But I'm sure they'll forget about that little misunderstanding if you tell them you just got a little angry." Cassidy held herself back from punching the seat in front of her, where she imagined Jerry's face grinning back. She wanted to end the sarcasm, something she was sure the woman knew, but she couldn't argue with the results. It wasn't like she would care what they thought about her, but of course Jerry was right. The police, even with Chip's help, would be a no-go thanks to her previous displays of aggression. There would be no other help for her now, so long as she remained on her journey to find the truth. They didn't say anything to each other for a moment, until Jerry decided to break the stalemate. Cassidy was watching a few storks take flight from the body of water they were crossing via another small bridge. "You know," Jerry made herself comfortable before continuing, "this place has been the same for so long, Cass. It's a broken chain of people screwing each other over for as many crumbs that fall from the table as possible. That might not mean anything to you right now, but think of it like this. If you want to get your way in this world, you need to start taking from the ones that take from you." "How?" Cassidy wasn't as focused as Jerry might have wanted. "You already made the first move back when you helped me get that info from the school." Jerry leaned into the conversation. "It's all about information. Like I said before, you gain the most power over your attackers when you know more about them. You've been with them for a good while, so you have that working for you. You know that they're working with the school to support the pre-launch of Southern Cuts meat products. But what is the one thing we haven't pieced together yet?" Cassidy never knew why the coven was in support of the products and experiments, other than Lydia telling them that they were the healthier choice in a world full of harmful chemicals. She kept asking for more information on it all, but none of the other coven members could give her an answer. Even Jessica was kept from most of the dealings, so nothing was ever revealed. That is, until that night when she was attacked. Cassidy thought back on Heather's words for a moment as the car pulled off to the side. It was the end of the ride, and Cassidy exited the car, feeling relieved that she no longer had to endure the smell of an old smoker, and took a deep breath in of the salted air before it hit her. Other people. Cassidy found herself thrusted back into thought. Jerry, what other people have ties to the project at the school? I believe you're asking the right question now, Cass. Jerry's tone grew serious. There are a lot of people standing to get paid for this product's successful rollout. Sometimes things go wrong with the process, and a kid steps out of line. Maybe that kid needs to be disciplined or taught to stay in a kid's place. Other times, that kid makes too much noise and needs to be sent to their room. They really had her taken. Cassidy clenched her jaw hard enough for it to hurt a little. The coven. Lydia. They had Amber taken because she started making too much noise. Jerry remained silent as Cassidy allowed her anger to cause her fists to tremble. The entire time, as she looked to them for guidance and security, it was the coven that pulled off the plot against Amber, to then turn on her afterwards because of what she learned by following in Amber's footsteps. The company's takeover was sure to make some faculty richer, but Amber and Cassidy's displays of rebellion put them in their crosshairs. It was all about money. The lives of the students meant nothing to them as long as they made a profit in the end. She began to walk down the sidewalk towards her next objective, but Jerry chimed in yet again. Now that it's all come full circle, what do you want to do? The question was left in the air a bit before Jerry decided to control the moment. Hold that thought, Cass. You have to get ready to break into a government-controlled facility. She made it past the gated guard post with ease, thanks to the fake ID and professional attire Jerry provided for her in the briefcase. She was where the employees of the docks prepared for their day of hard labor, on the many ships and 18-wheeler trucks that made up the daily traffic on the cement fields. The entire place smelled of handfuls of pennies next to burnt rubber, a hard industrial scent that she felt was absorbing into her clothes. Along with the salty air wafting from the ocean a half-mile away from any direction, the place had an unpleasant edge to the impressive view. She held on to the briefcase she was given and marched through the unmanned security gate until she was free to journey further into the busy place. Trucks and trains conducted themselves on larger roads than she had ever seen before. Large crane machines whirling back and forth, carrying large shipping containers place to place from overhead. It was a fascinating wonderland of American industrial prowess, and she found herself glad for seeing something so foreign from her daily toils. As she made her way towards her goal, the brick building off in the distance that Jerry had commanded her to pace towards, she felt the urge to peep over her shoulder in hopes of not being detected by any of the wandering police officers or nosy personnel. With one foot in front of the other, Cassidy maintained her stride nonetheless and managed to keep the creeping anxious energy from blowing her cover. "As long as you look like you're supposed to be here, you'll be fine." Jerry read her mind. "Easy for you to say." Cassidy was losing her fight against her anxiety. "What should I do if I see him?" Jerry had told her before, but only one part of it. She had done more digging into that Chris guy and found out that he worked in the shipyard, a dockhand with a thirst for cheap alcohol and young girls. Her gut tightened with each step as she walked closer to the door that led to the way station, where the dockhands had their break room. It was a simple job, said the one sitting far from the danger, but Cassidy was still determined enough to get what she came for, even if that meant facing the one person she knew kidnapped her sister and best friend. The interior of the dock lounge was clean and welcoming, a stark difference from the loud and messy land outside its doors. The white drywall and minimalist interior decor made her feel like she was back at Dr. Randall's practice, the thought of her skipping her appointments nagging her as she walked to where the mini kitchen was. When she was there, she set the briefcase on the table and waited a moment, choosing to take a breather before opening it to retrieve a plug-in device and inserting it into a nearby plug, as per Jerry's instructions. When she felt like she was calm enough to continue, she called Jerry and waited for further instructions. "You need to do 2 things here." Jerry made sure to pace herself so that she didn't lose Cassidy. "First up is the card that'll get you into the office on the top floor. It's in the men's locker room in the basement. Second, you'll need to get to the computer upstairs and plug in the stick drive you saw in the briefcase. When you're done, you'll need to get out of there and stay hidden until I tell you to move." "One question." Cassidy fought the desire to flee. "What do I do if I get caught?" "Plead insanity. Time starts now." Cassidy got up from the table and headed to the first location. According to Jerry, the locker rooms were on the basement floor. A trip down the elevator was all it was going to take. She followed the signs leading to the elevators, and before she turned a corner, she walked into a police officer. Her heart felt as though it stopped as she prepared to fail the mission before it even began. But the man was preoccupied with his phone, choosing to apologize before quickly walking around her to go about his own troubles. "The cameras don't just cut off," she heard the officer say to his phone as he turned the corner. A deep breath managed to restart her heart, and she continued, entering the elevator and riding it to the basement. The brief moment of respite felt rejuvenating, to say the least, and gave her the chance to recenter her thinking before it inevitably ended. When she was on the basement floor, she looked for the locker rooms and found them on the southern end of the building, near some vending machines. As she approached the room, she got a text message from Jerry. "You're looking for locker number 780. Jerry kept the conversation short. Cassidy entered the men's locker rooms and looked at the number on the locker doors. It was a maze that went on for forever, row after row of metal doors with the sole purpose of confusing her into giving up. She managed to remember to breathe and found herself staring at the door she was meant to open, the same type of door with the number 780 stamped onto the face of it. There was a padlock on the door, an obstacle that prompted her to pull out the piece of paper with the combination written on it, defeating it with relative ease. When she was granted access, she was greeted by a mess of men's apparel and a large duffel bag, the contents of which she maneuvered around before coming across what she needed, the key card for the top floor. With the first objective complete, Cassidy closed the locker door and walked back the way she came. Before she could release a sigh of relief, however, she heard a familiar voice echoing from near the entrance to the locker room. She stepped into a row of lockers and opened an empty one to hopefully blend in. There was no doubt she knew who the person that entered the locker room was. His callous voice sent her mind back to the first time she was introduced to him. As he drew closer to where she was, she could hear his conversation clearer with each step he took, allowing her to confirm who she thought it was. Chris. The man's voice was enough to make her tremble, but the thought of him being a culprit in Amber's murder justified it with anger. Exactly. It isn't my fault that they keep having tech issues while I'm moving crates. Chris maintained a conversation on his phone while occasionally tossing obscenities into the space for Cassidy to hear. Give me a break, Jordan. There was no other reason for me to get taken off the crane except for one of those idiots on the yard getting caught smoking between the cans. I swear, they'd better put some cameras out there, a gate or something, before we have to clean up another scene. She did her best to hide her head in the vacant locker, but wondered what would happen if he spotted her. She was sure that he would try to kill her, but perhaps not, thanks to the many people still working at that time. She didn't want to risk anything too dangerous, such as a direct confrontation, especially with the prospect of him becoming violent with her, not outside the realm of possibility. The only thing she could do was wait and see if he would pass by without noticing her, and thankfully, the man did just that, carrying on his conversation as he walked past her without thinking anything of the near-fated encounter. She didn't waste any time when he passed her, taking the momentum of his stride to shut the locker and walk towards the exit with as much haste as she could muster. She didn't look back, only forward, as she neared the elevators to escape the fear pressing on her back. She had done what she never would have thought, a slight trickle of dopamine cutting its way through the stress of the moment to reassure her of her accomplishments so far. When she pressed the call button, she was sure that the rest of the trip was going to be a bit smoother, but she couldn't get too excited so soon. There was no telling what was waiting for her upstairs. Hey! Chris's sharp tone stopped the air from entering Cassidy's lungs. His heavy footsteps assaulted the carpeted floor as Chris stomped an entire yard's length with each stride. He continued towards her as if he were ready to give chase if she tried to flee. Her attention split between doing just that or pleading for her safety. He was right beside her before she knew it, his heavy use of body spray trying its hardest to hold back the day's work stench. But she held her attention on the elevator for as long as possible as he began to ramble at her. You office types sure love making it hard to strike up a conversation. Chris leaned his arm against the metal frame of the elevator as he spoke. I'm trying to get back to work, but you guys keep stalling us with this computer stuff. Do you know when we can start back up? A few more minutes from what I heard. She went along with it. That's what you all say. Chris seemed to be falling for the rouge. I'm not holding my breath or anything. You're lucky you're pretty, or I'd be a little more mad at you. Hold on. Do I know you? Let me see your face. Cassidy's pulse poked at her temple as Chris drew in closer, the same industrial scent that flooded the docks radiating from behind his body spray as though he were the sole cause of the stench. There wasn't much else for her to do except pray that he did not remember her, the chances of that being slim at best. What would she do if he found out it was her? Regardless, she needed a solution quickly, or she was going to fail at finding Amber. She closed her eyes and took a deeper breath before putting on a desperate final act. I said we will let you and your team know when the cranes are able to run again. Until then, please go wait in the lounge until we are able to find out what happened. She didn't give herself the chance to doubt. Typical. Chris's annoyance at Cassidy's display of dominance made itself known through him sucking his teeth at her. Shame. We could have been friends, you know. No thanks. She hoped that rejection was enough to hurt him somehow. As she said this, the elevator arrived, and she entered it as quickly as she could, while Chris stormed off to find someone else to torment. She did her best to maintain her cool until the elevator doors closed, her body buckling at her knees as they did. She fought for control of her body as panic washed over her. He was so close to her, the one who was with Amber in her final moments, and she could do nothing but try to escape. She managed to press the button to ride up to the top floor of the building. The entire time she wrestled with herself as to how weak she was, how powerless and cowardly. As the elevator ascended the floors of the building, Cassidy began soothing herself in preparation for the next step of the plan. When her ride came to a stop, she entered the near-empty floor and looked around to spot which way to go. There was a single receptionist's desk, with no one to greet her behind its counter, and not much else, the basic space feeling more oppressive through its lack of decor. She walked up to the only door that led further into the office area and used the newly acquired key card on the pad that rested beside it. After a loud beep, she was allowed to enter and walk a ways before getting another call. The desk that you're looking for is to the back facing the shipyard. Jerry was more direct than her usual self, possibly because of her focus on something she deemed more serious than Cassidy's wrecked emotional state. With another keycard checkpoint, Cassidy made her way into the office she was supposed to be in and quickly messed with the computer in the ways Jerry had asked her to. When that was done, she waited, a longer wait than she was comfortable with. She was prepared to flee prematurely, but before she could muster up the courage, Jerry chimed back in with further instructions. The older woman seemed to be a bit more panicked in her speech, despite her distance from the scene. I'm done, Cassidy. She thought it was odd that she used her whole name. I need you to take the stick drive and leave the building as fast as possible. Okay, is everything okay? Cassidy's gut instinctively tried to touch her spine. No. Jerry remained vague. Move. Now. It felt as though the floor had dropped from beneath Cassidy's feet, the sudden rush of adrenaline kicking her heart as she snatched the stick drive out of the computer. She made a quick dash to the elevator and called it to her floor, but as she waited, she could hear some voices chatting as they rode their way up to her. Her head darted around in a frenzy to find another way out, her gaze falling on a sign pointing to the stairs. Her feet met each step without thought of caution as she reached and descended the stairwell in hopes of meeting her freedom. When she made it to the bottom floor, she could hear her pursuers' heavy footfalls reverberating from above, prompting her to use the key card one final time to exit the building into the parking lot. She was free of the building, but only temporarily. The whole Port Authority was on her tail, and she could think of no real way to evade them out in the open. She had a quick burst of genius thought and decided to run back to the main entrance. Her sprinting slowed to a brisk walk as she drew nearer to the front of the way station. There were several guards now posted at the doors and several officials and other important types yelling in the open about security breaches. She maintained her cool until she spotted the many officers that were chasing her, none of them managing to identify her as the culprit they were after. Cassidy made her way towards a gated area behind a large garbage can and collapsed to the ground. After catching her breath, she took a look at her phone and found a lengthy text message from Jerry, the older woman, telling her to stay out of direct sight of dock personnel for the time being. There was also instructions to reach her final location, a storehouse on the further end of the docks, by a cargo ship. After reading the message, she placed her phone back into her pocket and took the time to reflect by closing her eyes. She had managed to do the impossible and was about to be reunited with her sister. If only she were still alive. She didn't expect the docks to be such a large space filled with large equipment. It took her a lot longer to reach one of the way stations on the way towards the pier. While there, she managed to enter and find a closet to hide in after helping herself to a bottle of water and someone's lunch from the refrigerator. As she ate, she justified the theft by criminalizing all of the men that worked there. When she was ready to move on, she wrote a note to her victim, apologizing to them and stating her reason. In her mind, at least for the moment, she didn't want to be looked at as a monster by another person. At best, she wanted to be seen as a dumb kid. It took about another 30 minutes for her to finally reach the warehouse near the pier, a large steel construction with a matte powdery coating on its sides. Her steps were becoming more conservative, her mind swimming with a mix of hope and despair. A large part of her mind was warring with the thought that Jerry was a cyber criminal, like Chip had said, and that she could have been lying to Cassidy to get her to this point, to abandon her somehow. Given everything that she had been through with her so far, however, that was evidence enough against the claim. The truth was that Jerry had every possibility to get rid of her, even when she was beaten and discarded in the woods. It didn't seem as though Jerry was the type to lie like that, not with what they were dealing with at that moment. She wanted to continue the debate, but as she crossed the threshold to the warehouse, her phone rang. Good, we're back on. Jerry had returned to her more natural-sounding self. You gave me a little scare, kid. What happened? Cassidy wanted to leave. You said that I'd be okay as long as I listened to you. You're not caught, right? Jerry chuckled a little before continuing. This is the easy part. All you have to do is take a picture and leave. The interior of the warehouse was void of much light. Not that the setting sun outside was going to be much help, but there was still the matter of the pungent metallic scent that made Cassidy want to check her nose to see if she was having a nosebleed or something. She was exhausted, that much was obvious, but her determination kept her feet moving forward. Each step she took making her dread where those steps were leading her. She wasn't sure she would ever be ready to witness the sight of a body, that of her sister and her best friend no less, but she had to do it, not only for herself, but also for Amber as well. As she walked past rows of stationed cargo trailers, Jerry kept her company by talking to her more about her past. Chip didn't tell you everything about me, you know? She led the conversation in a manner that suggested she was trying to plead to a jury. When you're growing up with little to nothing but the clothes and food you can steal, it changes the way you deal with people. I see myself in you, actually. The people around you not being as trustworthy as you would think they'd be. It wasn't until I decided to take the power I was looking for into my own hands that I was able to become what I am now. Powerful. No longer weak and at the whims of the people who would control me with their ideologies and rhetoric from centuries past. I didn't think you were the philosophical type, Jerry. Cassidy tried to humor herself to keep from thinking about how scared she was. It's what you wanted, right? The question, whenever asked, always made Cassidy's mind ponder the fantasy. It's not something that you have to suffer for, you know? Lydia misled you. Your coven sisters lied to you with the intent to kill you, and your best friend was taken because of them. Your family was broken because of factors that were out of your control, and now here you are, looking for your sister's corpse. You know how to twist a knife, Jerry. Cassidy took a deep breath before continuing towards a few suspended shipping containers. Making her way through the next row of containers was easy enough until Jerry mentioned that she was close to where she would find her. Cassidy's breathing quickened as she placed one foot in front of the other, each inhale becoming harder to manage without a spike to her heart rate. She was near the back of the warehouse when Jerry stopped her. Jerry didn't say anything for a moment, which made her hold herself in a failed attempt to self-soothe. When she chimed in to break the sudden silence, Jerry presented her with a final way out. If you want to stop here, I understand. I already got what I needed from here anyway. Jerry confirmed what Cassidy had suspected from the start. Where is she? Cassidy ignored the warning. Several places. Cassidy nearly collapsed after hearing that. Part of her is in the container to your left. Cardboard box with red tape to the rear. Cassidy didn't waste any more time with hesitation and wrestled with the rusted metal handle that kept the door to the container airtight. When she opened it, sure enough, there was nothing in the container except a single cardboard box with red tape to the rear. Cassidy had to use the light on her phone to see, but as she drew near, she lowered it to stare at the brown thing for a moment. It wasn't until a moment had passed that she noticed the smell, sickly sweet and extremely pungent, enough to turn her stomach. After she puked, partially because of the shock, she reached out to the box and quickly pulled back. A whimper escaped her that led to a fit of tears and screaming. When she had calmed herself, she stilled her emotions and began to cut the tape to the box. Cassidy. Jerry talked her through the process. Remember what they did to you. Remember who it was that put you in this position. Cassidy got the tape off. It was the same people that killed your father and left your family to suffer without him. Cassidy lifted the tabs to the box slowly. It was the coven that misled you. It was the company that used your body. It was the ignorance of men and women who were power hungry and thirsty for blood that wanted you and Amber dead. Cassidy looked into Amber's missing eyes as she listened to Jerry finish her speech. You trusted everyone in your life to lead you to a place where you could live in peace, but they lied. Their peace was not your own, and now you're suffering because of it. I'm sorry, Cassidy. I'm sorry that this is how your lives have been used. Cassidy allowed her thoughts to run in response. There are too many players in this game, Cassidy. Jerry paused as Cassidy brushed aside some of Amber's hair. Chip told you about how those girls were found years ago, right? What he didn't tell you was how I got that information. It was from a corporate leak that I exploited. Just like Amber found out, this has been going on for years. Why? Cassidy managed to speak finally. God, why did this happen? What does it mean to live forever? Jerry's answer caused Cassidy to wipe her face of tears. Back in 1938, there was a guy who wanted to live forever, but he didn't know how. He looked for so many ways to do so, but everything he tried didn't work. Religion and theologies that he tried all failed to give him what he wanted, so he tried another approach. Entrepreneurship. He invested in bioengineering and modern medicine trends until he landed on an answer. Bacteria. Isotope I-347. Cassidy followed along. Exactly. Jerry shifted in her seat a little. When World War II was over and people were prepared to move on, he carried his research into longevity while funding the effort through exploitation of the isotope, putting it into everything where bacteria could become a problem, and incorporated under the new brand Cadwell. Since then, everything had been going well as far as his research was concerned, but he was getting older. He needed an answer to aging, and fast. Cassidy placed Amber's head back into the box. Jerome Cadwell is a desperate man who wants nothing more than to get what he wants. Cassidy stood after closing the box, took a picture of Amber's final resting place, and began walking out of the trailer. Desperate men will stop at nothing to get what they want. It doesn't matter what they'll have to do in order to find their peace, be it lying to the masses in order to trick them into supporting their deeds, stealing whatever they need in order to accomplish their goals, or killing anyone that gets in their way. I can just go home now. Cassidy spoke to the empty warehouse. It's like you said, Jerry, Jessamine. Men like him will stop at nothing. So why is that my problem? Amber's dead, like you said. I'm tired of playing this game now. If the answer to all of this trouble is that I'll lose in the end, why should I keep fighting it? I can just go home and quit the game myself. Is that what you want to do? There was no sarcasm in her voice this time. Cassidy stared at the ceiling of the warehouse and waited for something to happen for a bit. When nothing happened, she looked to her left and right, but there was nothing she was seeking there either. She looked at her phone and saw that Jerry had been on the phone with her the entire time, 36 minutes and 3 seconds. It was almost 5 p.m. when she took a deep inhale of the gross metallic air again and released a sigh that didn't seem to help anything before putting the phone up to her ear. Where to next? If we're doing this, Cassidy, we'll need to get you back into fighting shape. Jerry began to type something on her computer, the keys clacking as though expressing the woman's joy at her answer. You're going to get back in touch with your wild side. It pains me to say it, but I think that Cassidy has fallen into Jerry's maw. There's no telling what will come of the aid the cyber criminal is giving poor Cassidy this time. We'll have to wait and see what the outcome of her so-called help is when we come back next time. Thank you for listening to South, the Pinewood High School Incident. If you are enjoying the series, please leave a like, follow, and comment in the appropriate areas. Chapter 17 is marking the fourth from last chapter, and I would like to thank you all again for listening to my work. You can follow me on X at The Writer Wesley, YouTube at Wesley the Writer, and I'll be updating my email via Gmail soon, so get ready to flood my inbox. Thank you again, and I can't wait to continue our story next time. But remember, the mind is the battleground. Be careful to which side you give aid. Later.